Picture two teams walking out onto a World Cup pitch with one shared, unspoken prayer. Please, let us not win this. Imagine a scenario where putting the ball in the net is genuinely the worst outcome a manager can contemplate, where every attacking instinct, every competitive drive that has been built across an entire career has to be quietly suppressed in favor of a result that feels like surrender but is actually the smarter play. That is not a hypothetical. That is exactly what Algeria and Austria were staring down going into Saturday evening. A World Cup match that both teams, by the cold logic of the bracket, had very good reasons to avoid winning. The question is, how football, a sport built entirely on the pursuit of victory, arrives at a place where victory becomes the trap. To understand it, you have to understand what was waiting on the other side of a win, and what was waiting had a name: Spain, the reigning European champions. Third-ranked team on the planet, one of the 2 or 3 sides at this tournament with a genuine, credible claim on the trophy. Spain had won Group H the night before, and the bracket mechanics meant they sat directly in the path of whoever finished second in Group J. Second place in that group wasn't a reward. It was a direct route into the most dangerous opponent remaining in the draw, and finishing third. Thanks to FIFA's expanded 48-team format, the best third-place finishers still advanced to the knockout stage, and the third-place route out of Group J led not to Spain but to Switzerland, a serious team, a capable team, but not Spain. Not the European champions with Pedri pulling the strings and a defensive block that had conceded almost nothing all tournament, so do the arithmetic on what this meant. Win the match, finish second, face Spain, lose the match, potentially finish third, face Switzerland, and a dramatically improved chance of reaching the quarterfinals. 3 points, the currency footballers spend their entire careers chasing, had become a liability. The logical, coldly strategic thing for both teams was to not win. Austria's situation was the cleaner version of this particular dilemma. Their manager, Ralf Rangnick, is one of the most analytically rigorous coaches in world football. A man who built his reputation on pressing systems and data-driven decisions. Sitting down with his staff to model the permutations, Rangnick would have arrived at a conclusion that cuts against every instinct his coaching philosophy is built on. Defeat was the preferable outcome. A loss, the right kind of loss, could thread Austria through in third place and deliver them Switzerland instead of Spain in the last 32. Algeria's situation was more complicated and more dangerous, and this is the detail that gave the entire evening its tension. A draw was the result Algeria needed. Draw the match, slide into third place on the numbers, qualify as one of the best third-placed sides, and completely sidestep La Roja. But losing was not a version of safety for Algeria. The modeling gave them less than a 1% chance of advancing if they lost. They could not surrender. They had to avoid defeat while simultaneously not being particularly interested in winning. They needed to play for a draw, a very specific, very precise outcome in a match that their opponents might have preferred to lose. 2 teams, one needing a draw, one potentially better served by a defeat, playing each other simultaneously with the same kickoff as the other group game happening hundreds of miles away. And one more nation, Iran, watching from their hotel, with no control over anything, needing a decisive result to emerge because only a draw would eliminate them, and the draw was precisely what one of the 2 teams on the pitch most wanted. Before a single ball was kicked, people were already invoking the darkest chapter in the shared history of these 2 nations. 44 years ago at the 1982 World Cup in Spain, West Germany and Austria produced one of the most notorious 90 minutes in football history. The situation that day followed the same perverse logic. Both teams could advance simultaneously if West Germany won by a specific margin. West Germany scored early, and then both sides essentially stopped playing. The ball moved sideways and backward for the better part of an hour, while Algeria, who had already played, sat and watched themselves eliminated by a result that had been quietly arranged in front of 40,000 witnesses. The crowd burned banknotes in the stands in disgust. The match became known permanently as the disgrace of Guichon. It left a stain on the sport that FIFA eventually addressed by mandating simultaneous final group round kickoffs from 1986 onward, one of the rare moments in football governance where an obvious problem produced an obvious and effective solution. Now, those same 2 countries were back, same last-round scenario, same incentive structure pointing both of them away from genuine competition, and a third nation's fate hanging entirely on the outcome. The phrase "disgrace of Kansas City" was circulating before the referee had even blown the first whistle. The fear was understandable, a careful, professional, completely passionless non-event. Two managers staring at their watches, rotating their holding midfielders, keeping the game alive without ever really trying to win it. Football played at room temperature with all the urgency drained out. What actually happened belongs in a completely different category. Algeria and Austria did not play a careful nothing game. They played one of the most combustible, unpredictable, breathlessly entertaining matches of the entire group stage, producing 6 goals, multiple lead changes, sustained chaos, and a finish so dramatic it physically altered the emotions of a nation watching from a hotel room in real time. Austria went ahead first through Marko Arnautovic, a striker who has been carrying Austria's attacking ambitions across multiple tournament cycles and who appeared entirely unconcerned with the theory that his team might be better served not scoring. Algeria responded. Austria regained the lead through Marcel Sabitzer. Algeria with Riyad Mahrez, the most experienced and technically gifted player on the pitch, driving everything leveled again. For approximately 15 minutes somewhere in the middle of the second half, the game went quiet in a way that made the hairs stand up on the back of the neck. Algeria strung together an almost surreal sequence of consecutive passes going nowhere, sideways and backward in tight loops, the crowd beginning to whistle, the ghost of 1982 flickering across the stadium screens. It looked briefly like the cynical logic was going to win after all. Then Mahrez produced a moment in stoppage time that seemed to settle everything. A genuine winner. Algeria leading 3-2. The Algerian supporters erupting. And in a hotel room somewhere, an entire Iranian squad suddenly believing they were through. Because a decisive result had finally arrived, and the draw that would have eliminated them was no longer on the table. For approximately 2 minutes, Iran were alive. The math was working. The prayers had been answered. Then a substitute named Sasha Kalajic rose at the back post and headed the ball into the net with essentially the final meaningful touch of the entire match. 3-all Algeria and Austria level. Both teams through, Iran eliminated. In the time it takes a ball to travel from a right boot to the inside of a goal net, a nation went from qualification to elimination without touching a single thing that decided it. The symmetry of it is almost too sharp to have been designed. Austria, who might have been tactically comfortable losing, scored a late equalizer that cost them nothing in terms of advancement, but ensured they finished second, which meant they got the exact opponent they had spent the week trying to avoid. Spain are now waiting for them in the round of 32. The bracket delivered its irony at full force. Try to game the system, and the system games you right back. Algeria's coach, when he addressed the cameras afterward, said something that cut through all the tactical analysis and permutation mathematics and third-place qualification scenarios in a single sentence. He said, "Football won." He was correct. Every perverse incentive the bracket had constructed, every cold calculation that pointed both teams toward competitive restraint, every lesson from 1982 about what happens when the math overrides the instinct to compete, all of it was overridden by something that does not appear in any spreadsheet. The momentum of real competition, the pride of players who have spent their entire lives being trained to go forward and score rather than pass sideways and watch the clock. The impossibility when the crowd is roaring and a teammate is making a run, and the goal is there, of actually stopping yourself. This is the thing about football that tournament mathematics consistently underestimates. The incentive structure can be constructed perfectly to discourage competition. The bracket can make losing genuinely more profitable than winning. The cold, logical case can be airtight and completely correct on paper. And then 22 professional athletes who have been chasing goals since childhood walk onto a pitch together, and the whole elegant theory dissolves inside 90 minutes of something that cannot be modeled or predicted or planned for. The simultaneous kickoff rule that FIFA implemented after the original disgrace did its job. There was no communication channel between the games. Neither team could adjust in real time to what the other match was producing. Both had to play their own game without the safety net of knowing exactly what they needed, and the players' competitive DNA did the rest. Overriding the calculated positions, their managers might have preferred and producing instead a match that the tournament will not forget. Iran fly home having been, for a brief, cruel, luminous moment, alive in a World Cup they thought was already over. Algeria and Austria both advance, the former with the softer bracket path they needed, the latter with the appointment against Spain that the whole exercise was designed to avoid. The bracket got its revenge. The football was extraordinary. And the question that hangs over this tournament now is whether any future team will learn from what was attempted here, or whether the same human instinct that made Austria score when they perhaps should not have will always override the smartest tactical choice. Sometimes the game is simply too good at being itself to allow anyone to play it against its own nature. Would you want your team to deliberately lose if it meant a better path in the knockout rounds? Or is there a line that sport cannot cross regardless of what the bracket says? Leave your answer below and subscribe because the knockout rounds are beginning and every match from here carries exactly this kind of weight.